You guys will probably notice that it looks a little bit different here. That is because a big part of the pod is missing. That is Tiz, and that's because he's on vacation, but he'll be back. And because of that, though, I'm going to be taking it solo this one. So I guess we could just get right into the action as we always do on the Hurt Handbook. I was going to start with some Bellator, but there's not really too much to note. I mean, Logan Storley dominated Michael Venom Page using his wrestling. I figured if he didn't get knocked out, that was probably what was going to happen. So, I don't know. I've never been that high on MVP. Like, a lot of people hype him up because of his striking, but, like, if you can't defend takedowns from guys who are at your level, then, like, I don't know why people are ever really clamoring to see him in the UFC. I mean, you think about it, in that welterweight division, no way in hell he beats Usman. No way in hell he beats Colby. No way in hell he beats Burns, Hamza. I can keep going. Like there's the like. Let's see what the welterweight division's looking like right now. Not beating Bilal Muhammad. He's not beating. Vicente Luque might be a good fight actually for him. Wonderboy would be a great fight. Any striker in that top 10, but like people were always saying that he should be in like the UFC, but like I don't agree with that whatsoever. So Logan Storley just proved once again that his wrestling is just good, and then that I don't know, because I want to say that like his wrestling's elite, which it probably is. It's just that I don't take much from out wrestling Michael Venom Page. Like it's been done before. It's just he's had trouble with guys who have good grappling like in the past. Like this is a culture clash in a way, just because like this is a whole different Bellator era, but I would have loved to see back when like Ben Askren was in Bellator, like just dominating all these welterweights. I would have loved to see how he would have done against Michael Venom Page, because that's a true striker versus grappler match. But yeah, I mean it was kind of just a boring fight though. I mean Logan Storley just used his wrestling and pretty much just laid on him almost the whole time. Scott Coker was not happy, probably because his cash cow just got exposed once again, but yeah, you know, things like that are going to happen. I guess besides that, Paul Daly, he got a nice knockout. He said that was going to be his final fight. You never really know with MMA retirements, but with him, I really think it will be. If that's the way you want to go out in England, your home country, with a knockout the way that he had it, it was just so vicious. So good for Paul Daly going out on a win there. But we'll just get right into the UFC from there. So getting right into the UFC, I'm going to start from the first fight of the night. I'm kind of going to just like graze through the prelims just to get to the main card. As easy as it seems, it is kind of tough to talk about fights to nobody. So I'm just going to keep going until I run out of ideas pretty much. So Andre Petroski, he got a nice win over Nick Maximov. I didn't think that it was going to go like this. I figured that Maximov had the grappling chops to stick with Petroski's power and get through his early adversity, because I figured that Petroski would do good early, and obviously he did great early because he finished the fight with an anaconda choke within the first couple minutes. But I figured that wasn't going to happen because I thought that Maximov had the grappling to get out of that, but I think it was just too much power, too fast. Maybe the pressure of being undefeated got to Maximov a little bit because they were starting to hype him up a lot, although this was the first fight of the night, so maybe I'm wrong about that. But at least in the circles that I'm looking in, he seemed to have some hype behind him. And besides the fight itself, I loved the call-out from Petroski at Gerald Meerschaert. 3 weeks in Singapore, that's what he wants. Meerschaert's the best. Like I'm such a big fan of him. He had a great response. He said, yeah, he goes, I'm down. Maybe not 3 weeks though. I'm kind of fat right now. Just being real. Like I love that. And like I hope they do book that fight though, because in terms of like the technical breakdown of it, him versus Petroski is such an interesting fight just because of their grappling styles, because Petroski has that insane top control and he's got power and everything that he does, but his cardio is still But Meerschaert is so experienced. He's been around for a while. He's got great jiu-jitsu. It only takes one mistake to lose to him, because that's how quickly he locks up submissions, whether that be chokes, arm bars, any of that. Leg locks even, I think. Like, he's just got great jiu-jitsu. So I think with Petroski's wrestling, that'll be a really interesting fight. So I'm honestly really down to see that one. But from there, just a couple of things that I want to go through quickly. Tatsuro Taira, I mean, he he looked as good as we all thought he was going to look. He didn't get a finish, but he did look great on the ground. His grappling is really fun to watch. He's not one of these guys who just like lays on people boring in like a boring fight type of way. He's always looking for a finish, and that makes him really fun to watch. And he got a good win in his debut, so we'll see what happens in the future. But moving on from there, another effective grappling performance by Verna Jandarova against Angela Hill. I kind of figured that was going to happen just because Angela Hill, her grappling is getting better, and I think it got a lot better in this fight because I figured that Jandarova was going to get a submission, but Angela Hill was able to scramble out of a lot of those, and that was good for her. I mean, I never like seeing Angela Hill lose. She's another person who's one of my favorite fighters, and she's an interesting person, and just honestly, like, I think she's one of the best people, like, when they have the shows on the desk, like, before the pre-shows or UFC Live, whatever they call it. But, yeah, I mean, it just was a rough night for her going up against a good grappler in Jandarova. And on from there, very happy that Michael Johnson got a win. Great knockout over Alan Patrick. And it just really got me to thinking, because, like, I'm a big Michael Johnson fan. I mean, right when I got into the UFC was like when he was still like kind of in his prime, up in those like top guys in like the lightweight division, and it reminded, for some reason, I don't know why, I just thought of back in like probably 2017. It was like a huge press conference going into the summer, and I watched it, and it was just like, it was him. And in the lightweight division, he was fighting Justin Gaethje, who was undefeated at the time coming into the UFC. And then besides those two, the other two lightweights that were there that had a fight night that summer was Kevin Lee, who's not even in the UFC anymore, and then Michael Chiesa, who is obviously a welterweight at this point. And I honestly don't know how he ever made 155. But that was truly an iconic press conference. Like, Kevin Lee was just an absolute menace in that press conference. I mean, I know I'm stealing Michael Johnson's nickname, giving it to Kevin Lee, but Kevin Lee, honestly, he was talking shit about Michael Johnson. I remember he's like, yeah, he's had 30 fights, lost half of them. He says he's going to kill a motherfucker in there. He hasn't killed a motherfucker yet. One of the just most hilarious quotes that Kevin Lee has ever said, I think. And then obviously you got the iconic moment between him and Chiesa, where Lee was talking about Chiesa's mom. I hope his mama got tickets. And then Chiesa obviously got up, don't you talk about my fucking mom. He got right in his face, and then obviously they were throwing hands, but the security broke that up before anything crazy happened. And God, what a time in the UFC, honestly. I think it's a lot different than it is now. I mean, I'm going to go on a tiny bit, I think, of a sidebar here, but I think it's worth mentioning. Just like back in those days when it was on Fox, I feel like it still wasn't the type that it, like, because ESPN, it's so easy with any sport, and especially MMA, to like just build anybody into a star. But back then, like, you really had to work for it, and it took like the person fighting to, you know, give themselves some promotion, like, as well. It wasn't just Fox or the UFC doing it for them. And I think that was like what led to these hilarious press conferences that we used to have that we really don't have anymore. I mean, we have them occasionally. It depends on who's fighting, but they're just very like toned down nowadays, and I think that ESPN is a big reason of why that is. And I also think, though, that ESPN is a big reason why we have fights every weekend, which is something I'm grateful for. So that, like, there's trade-offs, but I honestly, like, you know, you got the guys like McGregor, the Diaz brothers, Masvidal, but those guys aren't winning belts. And the UFC used to have these pay-per-view people who used to win belts. Like Brock Lesnar was the heavyweight champion. Ronda Rousey was the women's bantamweight champion. When Conor was coming up, he won the featherweight title, the lightweight title, fought Floyd. But it's just like, nowadays, besides maybe like Israel Adesanya, and I think Usman is starting to get there, but I still don't think he is there. I just think that Adesanya is the only guy who has that, is like a pay-per-view star. And I think that ESPN is to blame for that. I just think that they're trying to make everybody into an interesting name, which it's just not everybody is. I mean, some people, like, they're so quick to label someone a top prospect after they get like one good win against a mid-tier person, and there's actually some like fights like that on this card that I honestly thought about. But it's just I just think that there's no huge name value anymore, like, because the UFC is just such a big company, and the way that they do it, they don't really give guys what they want at this point, like, unless they're at the top. And that's because they run a business, and they do it in a business model, and that's the only way that they think they can run a league. And I think that that's true, but like I said, it has some trade-offs, because, like, I miss those pay-per-view stars, and, like, I miss those huge pay-per-views, like, which we don't really get anymore. We get big ones, but they don't have that same, like, aura about them. Like, if you guys remember, like, when Khabib fought Conor McGregor, like, that was such a big event. Like, that was one of the biggest events of that year in, like, any sport. So you just don't see that. Like, when's, like, the last UFC event that you could really think of that was, like, a sports spectacle? Maybe, like, the last time Conor fought Poirier in Vegas, but, like, I don't really know. There's just not that many guys who have that same level of draw, and I don't think it's going to be like that, like, anymore, really, because I think that the UFC can run without just one good guy, you know, propelling huge pay-per-view numbers, because now they get the ESPN revenue, and they're, like I said, they're having fights every weekend, which is phenomenal. But I don't know. I mean, I guess like I said, there's some good and bad to that, because believe me, I love having fights every weekend. Like, we have so much to talk about every podcast, which is phenomenal. And, like, honestly, even besides that, it's just fun to watch the fights every weekend. It's just something to look forward to. But man, I do miss those guys, like, who would be able to really just sell a pay-per-view by themselves, because I feel like that's not really a thing anymore. But I guess just back to the UFC card. Andrea Lee losing to Vivian Arujo by decision. I thought that fight was interesting, because Andrea Lee, within the first 30 seconds, pretty much, like, separated Vivian from consciousness with a massive head kick. And Vivian clearly has a chin, because she got up and she stayed in that fight, won the rest of that round, and then won the rest of the fight, honestly, using her grappling. But Andrea Lee, I'll put my foot in my mouth here a little bit by saying that I did think that Andrea Lee was going to do a lot better in this fight than she did, but I still think that she showed, like, her skill, because obviously, like I said, that head kick, she did have some moments off of her back, but similarly to, like, a fight that I'm going to mention a little bit later, like, when you're grappling someone who's, like, a really good grappler from Brazil, you got to think that that's, like, some of the best jiu-jitsu that you're ever going to see, like, because there's black belts that are from, like, other countries, but, like, they're Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts in Iceland aren't as good as, like, a jiu-jitsu black belt in Brazil, like, because that's where it hails from, and they get the best training there. And I think that really was what made the difference in this fight. I'm still pretty high on Andrea Lee. I think that she has the skills to get further up in this division. I just think that this one was a bad matchup. But on to the main card. This is kind of what I was actually just talking about with Nascimento getting the win over Jake Hadley. This is what I'm saying. Like, people wanted to say that Jake Hadley was this incredible grappler from England. But, like, again, like, when you're from England and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, which actually I'm not 100% sure if he is, but if he's not, he does have fantastic grappling. I'm not even saying that. But when you're going up against a guy who's got great grappling, even off of his back, from Brazil, and just a step up from Brazil, from Shoot to Box, which is one of the best MMA teams just ever. Like, they're so iconic. I mean, and he had Charles Oliveira in his corner. You know, that just shows you that, that's the level of people that he's training with on a daily basis there. And I figured coming in that Jake Hadley's grappling wasn't going to be as good as Nascimento's, despite what the odds were saying, and that honestly, even, like, the DraftKings, I remember when I was making my lineup, the pricing was way, like, Hadley was one of the guys who was way up there, and Nascimento really wasn't. I don't really know why that is. I think it's probably because Hadley was undefeated. Maybe they were buying into the hype a little bit, but I don't know. I figured that Nascimento was going to get it done pretty much how he ended up getting it done. So on to Manuel Torres versus Frank Camacho. That fight was about what I expected. Tiz was trying to say that Camacho might have gotten a win. I don't know if he really believed that or if he was just trying to keep it interesting. But I didn't really see too much that Camacho was going to be able to do. I mean, when you're in your 30s, fighting a guy who's in his mid-20s, who's coming in with all the confidence in the world, faster hands than him. It's just like there wasn't much that he was going to be able to do, and obviously Torres was able to catch him pretty quickly and knock him out. But I'm not willing to say, and this is again like something that I was just saying before about how ESPN, like the way that they try to hype up fighters. Like Manuel Torres, he got a great win against a guy who is, so in the UFC. He's coming off a bunch of losses. Like, I'm not willing to say that the guy is like a bona fide prospect yet, like they were saying on the broadcast. He had a good win against a UFC level opponent, leaving it at that. And he does have a little, he has great boxing, and most of those guys from Mexico probably do, right? He's from Mexico. Manuel. Is he? You could never find. All right, yeah, he is out of Mexico. I was right. So, you always expect like pretty good boxing from those guys, and good chin usually too. And because of that, I figured if they were in the fire, Camacho was going to get the worst of it, which he did. And the thing is, though, Torres sometimes did have his chin up a little bit, and he got cracked a couple times. And against guys who are actually like pretty good in the UFC, that's not going to end up working for him. So just maybe keep the chin down. But besides that, great boxing displayed, and great knockout, honestly. It was just the combination that he landed on him was just vicious. Like those two hooks, one on the temple and then one right on the chin. Camacho just folded right after that. Great stoppage, too, by Herb Dean. And, we'll see what's going to happen going forward for Manuel Torres. But great first win in the UFC. On to the final few fights of the night, which I'm definitely going to get a little more into because there is just more to get into. Caitlyn Chukagian versus Amanda Hebus. Split decision win for Chukagian. A lot of people had a problem with that. I personally didn't, which I feel like I'm in the minority about that. I just think that pressure is good when there's not much happening, but when someone's landing, backing up, it doesn't matter. When they're landing, I don't see how you could give the other person the round, because round one I gave to Hebus, I think, because Hebus had the more effective grappling. I thought that the way she used her judo was actually really effective in that fight. I didn't think that Chukagian thought that Hebus was going to lean on it as much as she did. And she did a good job at getting Chukagian down and holding her in that head and arm position. But Chukagian's grappling is so underrated. I've said that. She was able to scramble out of it a bunch of times. And the thing is, like I said, when you're on the feet, Hebus was just pressuring, and she wasn't really landing much. She was throwing with more power, but Chukagian, like I said on the sportsbook, she's just so precise with how she fights. And because of that, I just think that you can't pick against her in some of these rounds. In round two, Hebus did get her down, and she did control her a little bit. But when they were on the feet, it wasn't even close. Chukagian is just picking her apart from a distance. And then in round three, I had Chukagian winning that one too. And at the very end, it got pretty interesting because Amanda Hebus was just screaming and going crazy. That was a loud fight at the end there. They were both screaming and just throwing bombs at each other. That was a war in the final minute there, because I just thought that was fantastic, honestly. It was a much better fight than we're used to seeing from Chukagian. I think that's just because Hebus pressured her and tested her a lot. I didn't think that Chukagian was as ready for the grappling as I figured she probably would have been. But, a lot of people had a problem with that decision. I get why they would, because she did have some nice control time. But on the feet, though, Chukagian was just picking her apart. And I feel like this came up, too, in the Sterling-Yan rematch in round one. Piotr Yan was coming forward, but he wasn't throwing or landing much. You can't give someone a round if they're not landing anything. Because even when they were on the ground in round one, she did a little better, but round two, she wasn't really landing that much because she was just trying to hold her down, because Chukagian is a good scrambler. And I think that when you're not landing when you're pressuring, that shouldn't matter, because the way that the rules work is it's by effective striking and effective grappling followed by octagon control. So you're not supposed to go to the octagon control unless you can't judge it from the other things. And like in this fight, I thought Chukagian landed plenty like to judge those rounds, and she got the win obviously. And I don't think it was a robbery. Some people do. I think that's just because they hate on Caitlyn Chukagian due to her style. I get that she's not a risk taker. I mean, believe me, I've had my fair share of times watching Caitlyn Chukagian fights where I'm not interested, but this fight was definitely better than a lot of her other fights just because like it was more of a battle for her. And like I said, I just think that she's one of the best flyweights in the world. I think without Valentina there, she could argue that she might be champion at one point. So we'll see what happens with that flyweight title fight in June. And I don't know. I mean, like, how many more wins does Chukagian have to get another title shot? I get that she like lost to Valentina badly, but let's see here. Because I think after a certain point, like, how can you deny her? Let's see. So she fought... That's bizarre. Why can I not find it right there? All right, I'm going to go on Tapology. That's what you get for trying to just use Google. Like I said, Tapology is the number one spot, in my opinion, for finding the MMA like knowledge you really need. They got the best like... What? Oh, wait, that's grappling. I was so confused. Okay, so pretty much she lost to Valentina in 2020. Then she beat Antonina, her sister. That's just kind of funny. And then she had that loss to Andrade, which I don't fault her for because Andrade is a killer. Then she beat Cynthia Calvillo, beat Arujo, beat Jennifer Maia, and now she's beaten Amanda Nunes. So that's 4 wins in a row. I'm not ready to give her a title shot yet. And she's not even calling for it, but I just feel like speaking it into existence is something that I should do, just because like how many wins are you gonna have to get another crack at her? So I think maybe if Santos wins, then I think Chukagian should get a title shot, but I'm not sure if Santos is gonna be able to beat Valentina. I mean, I think that's one of those things that I don't really know who is gonna be able to beat Valentina, but Chukagian, I think that she called out after the fight. She just wants any good good contenders just coming in, and like I think that that's good. I mean, she's used to fighting these girls who are at like the upper echelon already. She's beaten all of them, so why not give her some new fresh faces? She mentioned Manon Fiorot to be one name. There's definitely some other flyweights coming up that could definitely fight her. Yeah, I just think she's in a tough spot because when you lose to the champion as badly as she did, it's just tough to get another title shot after that, no matter who you beat. And this is her 4th win in a row, so we'll see if she can get one from there. But on to the co-main event, Ryan Spann defeating Ion Kute. And I'm just going to say to Tiz, I told you so. So pretty much like in this fight, I figured that Ryan Spann was a lot better than people are making him out to be. At the odds of this, or not the odds as much, but the pricing on DraftKings specifically, I remember just outrageous. Like Kute Labo is like 8,700, and Ryan Spann was like in the low 7,000s. So I was like, that is unbelievable. But Ryan Spann, he's really good like all around. He's got good power in his hands. He's very composed on the feet. He's got good wrestling. He's good at getting up off his back, as we saw in this fight. Because Kute Lava, he got him down a bunch of times like early, but Ryan Spann just was very easily just getting back up to his feet. And I knew even if the fight was to go on, it was going to affect Kute Lava's gas tank, having to take him down, get up, take him down, get up. Like, Ryan Spann is just one of those guys who I feel like is just constantly slept on because of a couple losses. Like the Johnny Walker one, it was a good fight while it lasted, but he just settled in a bad position. If you guys remember, he was kind of like going in for a takedown, but he left his head wide open, and Johnny Walker was just landing a bunch of hammer fists and knocked him out using those. And then in the Anthony Smith fight, I personally think it was a lot of pressure, like mental pressure, because that was his first main event in the UFC. He was saying leading up to the fight how he just wanted to provide for his family. He's using MMA as a means to provide, and like I don't know. He was putting too much pressure on himself. I'll just say that. Like, because when you're fighting with your family on your mind and all these other things, like, that's never a good thing, and that's never something you should put on your mind for a fight, in my opinion, at least. I think it's hard enough to just get into a fight as it is, and then, like, you have all that on top of it. I think that was honestly what happened in that fight. But Anthony Smith is also really good, so I won't hold that too much against him. But like I said, I just think that he's going to be rising through the ranks pretty soon, and I think this win is the start of hopefully a nice little run by him. And there's not really too much to say besides that. It was a crazy fight while it lasted, but the standing guillotine that he ended up, well, honestly, it wasn't even really standing. It ended up being on the ground, but let's see, what did they, like, officially, just guillotine choke, that's what they say, so not standing or on the ground, but started up on the feet, because what happened was it was like the third or fourth time that Spann had gotten up, and Kute just immediately tried to take him down again, and Spann just locked up his neck, and then right off the bat, you knew it was in right away, because he tapped quick. So that was just a great win by Ryan Spann. I told you Ryan Spann would win, Tiz. I told you. He made me some money in my lineup. I can get into that actually a tiny bit before we get into the main event. I did have Alexander Rockach in my lineup. That ended up obviously not working into my favor. But I had Ryan Spann, who got obviously a first-round finish. Manuel Torres, who got a first-round finish. Verna Jandarova and Tatsuro Taira, who both got good decision wins with heavy grappling control. And the other one that I picked was Andrea Lee, who didn't win, but she did have a couple of great moments that got her some points. So I was in like the top 100 of like 2,000, so that's kind of cool. And I won some money on that. That's how you know me and Tiz just aren't blowing smoke when we're doing the sports book. Every time we play, we usually win some money. So I just want to give that a plug, because the sports book always deserves a shout out. Then people ask me a lot, like on the Instagram, they say like that we should give like our all of our picks, but like if you want all of our picks, you just got to watch the podcast. I'll do it occasionally. I'll probably save that for pay-per-views, because I feel like that's just one of those things that, you know, putting that on Instagram is just more publicity. But so my lineup did pretty good last night. I'm happy to say that, proud to say that, because I mean, obviously me and Tiz got a lot of our predictions correct, as we usually do. And definitely tune in on Friday to the Hurt Sportsbook. And getting right into just the main event, Jan Blachowicz gets a third round TKO over Alexander Rockach. Wasn't your typical TKO. I mean, I had it 1-1 going into round 3, and I think that was the consensus, obviously, because round 1, both guys showed like pretty good boxing. Rockach's jab looked good, but Jan Blachowicz was landing a lot of leg kicks, which was actually phenomenal on his part in terms of like fight IQ, because I think one of the best ways to defend leg kicks is to just throw them yourself, because then like it's, you know, you're tearing up the other guy's leg. He's not going to be as willing to throw up as many leg kicks there. And I think in this fight, Jan did a good job at using his leg kicks. His boxing looked good at certain points too. Round 2 was a little bit tougher. Rockach used his wrestling, and he had really good top control. A lot of good ground and pound as usual. And just, like I said, I think that Rockach is just the real deal. I think that this one was just, you know, bad things happen. Blew out his knee in round 3, just completely out of nowhere, just put his weight on his back foot, and it just gave out on him completely. Fight was stopped right from there. It's tough to see that. You never want to see anybody get injured like that, and especially when it's not even really caused by anything that happened in the fight. It was just a freak occurrence. So hopefully he heals up really quickly, because I still believe that he is one of the best light heavyweights in the world, if not the best, honestly. So Rockach, hopefully he heals up. But Jan Blachowicz will definitely focus more on what's going to happen with him coming out of this fight. So in June, we do have the light heavyweight title fight between Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka. And a lot of people were saying that Jan should get an immediate rematch versus Glover after this fight. But like I don't know. I'm not willing to say that yet. I mean, Jan kind of folded in that fight, and he says it was a mental thing, and I get that it might have been, but I don't know. You can't get finished that easily in a title fight and then expect to get right back there unless there's no other contenders. I mean, you still got Magomed Ankalaev around there. Anthony Smith is hovering around that top 5. It's just like, I think there's more fights for Jan if Glover wins. So my viewpoint is if Glover wins, I think that Jan should have one more fight. It should be against either Anthony Smith or Ankalaev. Let me just make sure that they're not fighting. Because you never really know. Called for... No, that's a different fight. It's just so, like... That division is so, like, stacked now that Anthony... or not Anthony Smith. That John Jones is out of it. Just because, like, nobody was really beating John Jones. And now it's, like, wide open, honestly. Because now that he's gone, you got all these guys who are pretty much at the same level as one another. And they're all fighting each other. So this is what we want, right? Oh, wow, he is fighting Anthony Smith. Okay. All right. Okay, so maybe, let's see. Well, if we got the title fight in June, that fight is slated for July 30th, UFC 277. I don't know. I'd give it some time. I wouldn't give him an immediate title shot right after that win, especially considering the circumstances of how it happened. I think that Jan could very well win a rematch with Glover, but I just don't think he doesn't deserve that shot just yet. So I think if Glover wins, Jan should probably fight the winner of Smith versus Ankalaev, and then the winner of that should fight Glover for the title. But besides that, though, I think if Yuri wins, I think that you could give Jan an immediate title shot right from there, because they haven't fought yet. It's a fresh matchup. It's a good matchup. So hopefully the UFC kind of agrees with me there. I haven't really heard much because it's obviously just fresh right after the fight, but usually you hear something. But this one, you don't really know what many people are thinking. A lot of the MMA community seems to think that Jan should just get another title shot. I don't know about that, like I said. So we'll see how the matchmaking ends up and how these fights start playing out. But, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty average weekend in fights. I'd say this card was entertaining. There wasn't really much else besides that I have worth noting. Next week is Holly Holm versus Caitlyn Vieira, a bantamweight main event. I'm pretty excited for it. They're both really good strikers. I mean, Holly Holm, I never know how to feel, just because her fights sometimes are like uneventful. Like she kind of the same things that people. This is how you know like MMA fans are biased, because people love Holly Holm and she fights the exact same way as Caitlyn Chukagian. So like, if you hate the way Caitlyn Chukagian fights, then why do you like Holly Holm? That's my whole point there. But Holly Holm is obviously a UFC icon at this point. You know, everybody will always remember that knockout she had over Ronda Rousey as long ago as it was at this point. She's always in that upper echelon of the bantamweight and featherweight division for the women. And I think her versus Caitlyn Vieira is a really good fight, honestly. And Caitlyn Vieira is coming off that win over Miesha Tate. So I think it's a logical step up. And hopefully that'll be a good 5-round fight for us. And besides that, I'll see you guys during the week with Talkin' Tough. Be sure to tune into that. And also tune into the Hurt Sportsbook on Friday when we break down all the action that's coming on the Holm Vieira card. See you guys then.